Hi, everyone, and welcome to this installment of News Digest for Masters of Supply Chain. I'm John Church, and I'm lucky enough today to be joined by my friend Ann Robinson. Ann with a background as the Chief Strategy Officer at Kinaxis and at Verizon. And it's been an interesting sort of first half of the year, if you will, for supply chain leaders. And it's been interesting to sort of watch it go along. I was actually in a board meeting earlier this week, and I ran into a friend of mine, and who's the chief supply chain officer at a company. They do about 35% of their sourcing through China, and I've sort of approached this with this eye toward, okay, you don't want to do crazy stuff here until we kind of figure it out because it seems to be changing all the time. And he told me that by the end of the year, he will have 95% of their sourcing moved from China into other places. And so people are making pretty dramatic actions around this in order to change. And I said, hey, are you doing this because you think you got the answer and you know where things are going to net out? And he said, it's as much because we knew we were over concentrated, and we saw it from an enterprise risk management standpoint that maybe we were just the supply chain was too elongated, or it was all concentrated in a place, and we needed to take some action. And so I found that interesting. And it sort of leads us to this so what of you've been hearing a lot about manufacturing closer to the consumer. And I'd imagine in your circles, people are talking about the same thing. There's like this knack of, or this idea of reshoring. Are you having similar discussions with people? Are you hearing similar things?
I absolutely am. Yeah, John, great to chat with you today. It's really interesting the different directions that people are going. This notion of sort of centralized focus to decentralized, but now decentralized in a way that you want to be closer to the consumer, closer to your raw materials, in such a way that it's almost like the dual sourcing mentality, but we're getting into dual manufacturing, or how close can we get that to the final consumer so that they'll get it when they want it, how they want it. We went through a little bit of a luxury during COVID where people's attention to I want my products now the way I want them, they sort of took a step back and said, okay, I'll accept a longer lead time. I'll accept something that maybe I wasn't interested in before. But not so much. We're not. We're back. We're back to what we want when we want it. And the some of the the political currents, the probably the climate currents around causing all kinds of disruptions. We can't afford that risk. So
Right.
companies are absolutely making investments closer to their end consumers so that they can have that product available.
And that leads to a bunch of considerations and challenges. Not only, obviously there's the capital involved in doing that, presuming you're doing your own manufacturing or you're having to come for somebody doing it on your behalf. But and doing that in an environment where the interest rates are, mid to high single digits, as opposed to back in the good old days of money was free. But additionally, someone's got to run these plants. I mean, we haven't built people aren't building lots and lots of manufacturing in the US. I think I saw a stat that said, even back over the early 2000s, and only 15% of the jobs were in North America were linked to manufacturing.
Hmm.
Everybody had sort of said, look, this is a service economy, and when we're going to do things and we're going to deal with hard goods, we're going to bring them in from where's the best place to manufacture. And so this is a big change. We don't have a ton of idle capacity sitting around, certainly in the US, and a lot of people to do it. So I think it's going to lead to an interesting discussion of how do we gear up for that, and what do these plants look like that maybe their predecessors didn't.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with talent. I think that's going to be one of the number one concerns as we move into this localized manufacturing. Um, it's not the manufacturing of days gone by of assembly lines of people with these sort of, monotonous, repetitive jobs. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about facilities that are highly automated, with highly skilled engineers in there who are ensuring the quality of the manufacturing process, the speed of the manufacturing process, and an end product that is reflective of that organization's deliverables. Um, it's not going to be the 10,000 person facility that's pumping out widgets that we have
Right.
almost cartoonishly in our minds from decades ago.
Right, right. The I Love Lucy episodes of
Yeah,
the cake's coming through
chocolates.
the wall. What are you going to do? It's interesting. When I used to approach automation, it was really around, can I cost save? Is automation going to be a way for me to increase the productivity of the workforce and take out the tasks that maybe I can automate, allowing them to work on different things. And it was always an economic return kind of an issue, assuming I could make safe quality product. I think that more and more the question is going to be, I'm going to automate to reduce my dependency on people because I don't know where those folks are going to come from.
Yeah.
We haven't built an economy and even a education system that gets people ready for manufacturing kinds of roles. And I think to your point, these aren't mundane kinds of jobs. These folks have to understand computer interfaces and understand the technology at a quite high level. It's tough enough in North America to find skilled mechanics, much less when we raise the level of the operators and to technicians. It requires very different things of folks. And you and I were talking offline. I think you mentioned a plant, was it Keen Footwear that's doing some, I guess, relocating. They're expanding, but they're also relocating. And this isn't even near shoring. It's from Oregon to a different part, to Kentucky, I think you said. Yeah. So interesting to see. And do you know some of the specifics around that plant or what they're thinking of, why they're thinking about it?
Well, first of all, for those of you who don't know, and if you don't have a school-age child at home in particular, Keens are very popular with that crowd. Great footwear organization, and yes, they are clearly in demand. They're lovely shoes, and it sounds like they've made the decision, and I believe the plant's going to open up next month. Isn't that what we were discussing?
I think so.
Where they're really focusing on advanced tooling, advanced robotics, automation with a very small skilled labor force. And that's really, we're raised as supply chain practitioners to think about cost trade-offs. And this is one where it comes into play. How much do you invest in the people to ensure that you still have those that are knowledgeable on the line if something happens, and how much are you investing in the actual technologies? At the end of the day, whether it's robotic automation through mechanical means or it's the AI that's actually leveraged to make those robots, do the manufacturing process, they don't have a conscience. They can't work with their buddies. They can't collaborate if there's an issue. And so having those humans along with them who have the skills to be able to ensure those levels of operation, but also be there for moments of challenge or crisis. I mean, that's really some of the balance we're talking about as these new facilities come into play. I think Keen is good on them for taking this leadership step. We've seen other facilities, commit to building in the U.S. A lot of the chip manufacturers, certainly coming out of COVID,
Sure.
said, we need to build locally. But they've got a constant demand and growing demand. I had a conversation, I don't know, maybe 18 months ago about the fact that now the chips are competing not just with your electronics in your home, but things like mattresses and other things also have these semiconductor chips in them. So they have a growing demand. It makes sense. The addition of additional manufacturing closer to the end customer. It's a natural progression for those businesses. But you talk about something like footwear. Again, this is an older business. It's one that will ebb and flow with some level of fashion. And yet they have the foresight to see that taking advantage of this moment in time, having this new facility, leveraging these new automation tools is really going to allow them to differentiate. And I've got a keen, no pun intended, I've got a keen eye to see how they're going to do over the next little while.
But pun appreciated. So, think about that footwear. I mean, everybody moved everything to Asia. Yes, there was the niche on your social media Italian shoemaker. There was, there were a couple examples of where people were doing stuff closer to home if you lived in North America. But this idea of we're going to bring it here, we're going to bring it here for these reasons, and we think we can pull it off. I think it'll be really interesting. To your point earlier on, these are not your grandfather's manufacturing plants. We're going to have to, regardless of their skill set, we're going to have people running these plants.
Yes.
And it gets back from I can't just throw bodies at a solution. These jobs have to be sticky. They have to be ones that people want to do, and they're going to have to justify the labor rates that you're going to have to pay, not only to just bring it into the United States, but to compete with the fast food place down the street that's paying $18 an hour. And so as you start paying $20 and $30 and $40 an hour for people to work in your plant, it really gets to how are you going to onboard them? What level of autonomy are they going to have? Are you running a safe workplace that people want to be part of? And candidly, those are advanced skill sets in manufacturing. I mean, I think we've all been in plants where we see and we're like, this place is amazing, and the people running the lines are professionals who are dedicated and committed. They have a huge amount of autonomy because they have the skill sets and the manufacturing systems and the information to empower them to make those decisions. But that's not everything. But I think that may be the new standard for us. As you worked in information systems in some form or fashion, communication, and in providing it. Part of the frustration and being in a manufacturing plant is you're doing something that no one's going to appreciate or do because there's a changeover coming, things move to the velocity of fashion and shoes and footwear. It may be an interesting sort of next level where we're going to have to provide better information and better planning and better integration to allow these folks to be at their best.
Yeah, so there's a couple of threads I'd like to touch on, but first let's just
Yeah.
talk about the role of the manufacturing practitioner, the supply chain practitioner. Over the last, I want to say 15 years, this has gone from being a less interesting role or maybe a starter kind of role career-wise to one that requires a much broader, much more interesting skill set. So yes, while it may be somewhat behind the scenes, you need to understand the product that you're serving. You need to understand the processes with an eye to improving those processes as the market changes, you need to know your suppliers. You need to, and we're talking about relationships, dual sourcing where possible, a spot market where needed. You need to understand these full processes. And yes, maybe someone doesn't own it in its entirety and it's piece by piece, but these are far more interesting and engaged roles that someone can build a career off of, unlike a job that you might have gone to historically, or something that may, again, been where you started your career, but not necessarily where you grew and finished your career.
Sure.
Having said that, you mentioned some of the Italian designers who are making their own. Have you looked at those price tags? And that's one thing that really this skill set is important. It's not cheap, and it shouldn't be. The place does need to be clean. It does need to be a desirable working location. How do we do that in a cost containment way that allows access to these shoes, for example, when you are comparing them with those that maybe not made that are still being made in Asia and other parts of the world, where there is a lower cost of labor, where they have the opportunity to the just lower cost of total cost of manufacturing. That's, I think, going to be one of the biggest challenges as you look at North American increased production of goods.
Right. We become accustomed to readily available and affordable labor, and the products they can produce shipped in bulk and relatively cheaply on ocean freighters, even on planes to the United States and to Canada and to Mexico. Bringing that stuff back into North America is going to require us to think a little bit differently. And as consumers, that's going to cost. We'll see where it nets out.
Yeah, are you willing to make that? I looked recently at a, and I don't even know the brand, a Canadian made toothpaste brand. And I was like,
Hmm.
oh, that's fun. Let me try that.
Sure.
$10, $12 a tube. I'm like,
Yeah.
maybe not.
Yeah.
You know, and I want to. I think it's really interesting. I'm intrigued by this product, but the price point, even for me, it's making me think twice. And
Sure.
I think about people right now who are sort of struggling to put food on the table. Is this, again, you're looking at societal challenges? Is this really, how do they balance? How do you make those decisions in such a way that you're taking advantage of things that are being made, locally, but also in a way that's affordable, that you can look after your family. It's a
Right.
challenge for people.
It is for sure. Well, it's an interesting time to be in supply chain. It's an interesting time to see where all this is going to net out. And I appreciate your time today. Great to catch up with you. And but thank you for tuning in, gang. If you enjoyed it, if you like what you heard, and you want to hear more, please hit the subscribe button on whatever platform you're looking at. And from us here at Masters of Supply Chain and the Weekly News Digest, thanks for tuning in. Fashion.